I inherited a multi-million-dollar tech empire at just 28, a legacy built by my father's brilliance and determination. Back then, I thought I understood pressure. I carried the weight of an empire on my shoulders. Every decision, every deal, every sleepless night, it was all for the company, for his memory, for the future I'd vowed to protect. But nothing could have prepared me for the day Kevin walked into my life. He wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. His brilliance lit up the room, his charm was effortless, and his vision, it was electric. That day, he wasn't just another entrepreneur pitching ideas. He was something else, entirely. I remember the way his words flowed with such confidence, how his ideas felt like sparks of something revolutionary. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of a story that would change everything. At first, it was all business, long nights in the office, debating strategies, refining plans, building dreams. Kevin wasn't just a collaborator, he became a confidant, a friend. His insights breathed new life into my company, and his presence brought something I didn't even know I was missing. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as the CEO of a tech empire, but as me. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to feel it, a pull I couldn't resist. My heart raced when he walked into the room. My thoughts lingered on him long after the workday ended. And with each passing day, I felt myself drifting into uncharted territory. I had built my life on control, on discipline, on unshakable resolve, yet here I was, standing at a crossroads. One path promised safety, the empire I'd spent my life protecting. The other, it was Kevin, the unknown, the risk, the potential to lose everything I'd worked for, and maybe, just maybe, gain something I never dreamed possible. I took a deep breath, and I made my choice. What I didn't realize then was that this wasn't just a love story. This was the start of something much darker, something so deep that would shake the very foundation of my life, my legacy, and everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. And that, my friends, is where my story truly begins. Kevin and I continued to work closely as I tried to ignore my feelings. The company hit a rough patch not long after he joined, a potential financial collapse brought on by some shady business dealings that came to light. It was Kevin who stepped in with solutions when I felt like the walls were closing in. He had this way of making the impossible feel manageable, of seeing angles I couldn't in the chaos. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying the entire weight of the company alone. Slowly but surely, he became someone I relied on, not just professionally, but personally. Our friendship blossomed in those late nights, surrounded by spreadsheets and coffee cups, sharing stories about life, dreams, and regrets. He wasn't just the brilliant consultant I'd hired, he was a friend. He listened when I needed to vent about the pressures of leading a legacy I didn't feel ready for. He'd say things like, "You're not just running a company, Maya, you're redefining it, and you're doing it better than anyone else ever could." Words I didn't even know I needed to hear until he said them. But of course, not everyone saw Kevin the way I did. My best friend Elena pulled me aside one day and said, "Be careful, Maya. Guys like him don't just show up out of nowhere. He's charming, sure. But what if he's after more than just a job?" I brushed her off with a laugh. My mother hinted at it too, during one of our weekly calls. She didn't outright accuse him of anything, but her voice was heavy with suggestion when she said, "You've worked too hard to let anyone come in and take what your father built." I told them both the same thing. Kevin isn't like that. He's not just helping the company, he's helping me. And I believed it. Because how could they see what I saw? Kevin wasn't just brilliant, he was kind, he was patient. He understood me in a way no one else ever had. So when our friendship evolved into something deeper, I didn't resist it. How could I? I'll never forget the first time we kissed. It wasn't planned or rushed. It was after another long night at the office. I was pacing, stressed about an upcoming presentation, and he just stopped me mid-sentence. "You're overthinking this," he said with a soft smile, his hand brushing against mine. And then it happened. Soft, steady, like he'd been waiting for the right moment. Falling for Kevin didn't feel like a choice. It felt inevitable. He became my safe place, the one person who saw all the cracks in my armor and never judged me for them. He would stay up late just to make sure I ate, leave little notes of encouragement on my desk, and hold me close when I felt like the world was crumbling. With Kevin, I felt like I could finally breathe. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Maya, the CEO. I was Maya, the woman who was loved for who she truly was. But even as I fell deeper, the warnings from those I trusted lingered in the background, like whispers I couldn't quite silence. Whispers that hinted at a storm I wasn't ready to face. And if I'd known then what I know now, maybe I would have listened. It happened on a quiet evening, under the soft glow of the city skyline visible from my balcony. Kevin and I had been together for a year by then, and in that time I'd fallen deeper into the kind of love I'd only read about. He was my partner in every sense of the word. That's why, when he knelt down with a ring in hand, his voice trembling just slightly as he asked me to be his wife, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I whispered, tears in my eyes, my heart swelling with a joy I didn't think was possible. It felt like a dream, the kind you never want to wake up from. Our wedding was everything I'd hoped it would be. It wasn't just the extravagant venue or the sea of smiling faces that made it special. It was the way Kevin looked at me that day, like I was the only person in the world. The vows we exchanged weren't just promises. They were declarations of a future I was certain we would build together. Marriage suited us. Our partnership grew stronger with every passing day. Kevin took on more responsibility, becoming deeply involved in both my business and personal life. I trusted him with everything. Decisions about the company, financial matters, even the little things like what we'd have for dinner. A year later, I discovered I was pregnant. I'll never forget the way Kevin reacted when I told him. He pulled me into his arms, spinning me around the room, laughing like a child who'd just been given the world's best gift. "We're going to be parents," he said, his eyes shining with a joy that mirrored my own. But this wasn't just any pregnancy, it was a delicate one. At every checkup, the doctor emphasized the importance of rest. "You need to stay off your feet, Maya," he warned. "Stress could jeopardize both you and the baby." Those words lingered in my mind, forcing me to make one of the hardest decisions of my life, stepping back from work. Kevin was incredible during this time. "Don't worry about the company," he said, his tone steady, his confidence unwavering. "I'll handle it. You just focus on our baby." And so, with a heavy heart, I handed over the reins of my empire to the man I trusted most. At first, it was strange to watch from the sidelines, but Kevin made it seem effortless. He updated me on every detail, his enthusiasm for the company's progress, filling the gaps where my involvement used to be. And when the weight of isolation began to creep in, Kevin brought Emma into our lives. "She's here to help with the smaller things," Kevin explained, introducing her as the new maid. Emma was calm and quiet, with a beauty and intelligence that were hard to miss. She had this uncanny ability to anticipate my needs, bringing me meals before I could ask, making sure I was comfortable, and keeping everything in perfect order. But there was something about her I couldn't ignore, those lingering stares, the way her eyes seemed to follow me when she thought I wasn't looking. At first, I chalked it up to her being attentive or overly cautious. After all, I was on bed rest. Maybe she was just being considerate. Kevin didn't seem to notice anything unusual. To him, Emma was just doing her job and doing it well. But as I lay there day after day, confined to my bed and watching the world move on without me, I began to wonder if those subtle, lingering gazes were more than just harmless glances. Looking back now, I see how those early moments planted the seeds of doubt, how Kevin's seamless assumption of control, Emma's quiet yet pervasive presence, and my own vulnerability set the stage for something far greater than I could have anticipated, something that would shatter the foundation of everything I thought I knew about love and trust. Emma had become a fixture in our lives, and I couldn't ignore how her presence had shifted from helpful to almost invasive. She was always around, always there when I wasn't feeling well, hovering like she had a stake in my world that she shouldn't. The way she looked at Kevin, the way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't paying attention. And then there was Kevin. I couldn't help but notice the distance between us growing each day since Emma arrived. When I spoke to him, I felt like I was talking to a stranger, someone who didn't know me, didn't understand me, didn't care for me the way he used to. He'd become more withdrawn, more secretive, and my once open partner had become someone I couldn't quite read. The night it all began to unravel started as any other, peaceful, quiet, with the faint hum of the city in the distance. I remember drifting off to sleep, Kevin's arm draped protectively over me, the baby's faint movements lulling me into a sense of security. But something startled me awake, a feeling, an absence. I reached over instinctively, but Kevin's side of the bed was empty. My heart quickened as my eyes darted toward the clock on the nightstand. It was past midnight. Where could he be? I slid out of bed, careful not to disturb the fragile balance my body required, and padded softly into the dimly lit hallway. The house was silent, except for the faintest of sounds, a low murmur coming from downstairs. I followed it, my steps cautious, my breath caught somewhere between curiosity and unease. The voices became clearer as I approached the kitchen. I froze just outside the doorway, the cool tiles beneath my feet grounding me as my heart hammered in my chest. This isn't what we agreed on, Kevin. A voice hissed, sharp and trembling with frustration. Emma. I told you to trust me, Kevin replied, his tone firm yet coaxing. Oh, it doesn't change anything. Emma's voice cracked, her emotions spilling over. She's pregnant, Kevin. You're going to have a child with her. Do you even realise what that means? Where does that leave me? A lump formed in my throat as I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear every word. Kevin sighed, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Emma, you know I care about you. I love you. But this is complicated. You knew what this was from the start. There was a moment of silence, so heavy it felt like the walls themselves held their breath. You love me? Emma's voice was filled with anguish. Then why are you still with her? Why do I have to hide in the shadows while she gets everything? Your time, your name, your child. Kevin's response was soft but cutting. You know why? We're building something here. I can't just throw that away. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of their conversation. The betrayal in Emma's voice, the calculated calm in Kevin's. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood frozen, tears streaming silently down my face as the weight of their words sank in. Kevin, my rock, my partner, the father of my unborn child, was not the man I thought he was. And Emma, the woman who had been so attentive, so present, was far more than just a maid. I wanted to burst into the room, demand answers, scream, cry, anything to release the storm that was brewing inside me. But I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor, my body paralyzed by the magnitude of what I'd just uncovered. So I stood there, hidden in the shadows, listening as my world began to crumble. And in that moment, I knew that the life I thought I was living, the life I had built so carefully with Kevin, was nothing more than illusion. The moment of revelation hung heavy in the air as I wiped the tears from my cheeks and forced myself to step forward. My legs trembled, but I willed them to move. I couldn't stay hidden in the shadows any longer. I pushed open the kitchen door, the creak of the hinges slicing through the tense silence. Kevin and Emma jolted, their heads snapping towards me like children caught doing something forbidden. What's going on here? My voice was steady, but the words felt foreign in my mouth, heavy with the weight of suspicion. Kevin was the first to react. He smiled, a practiced, disarming smile that I'd seen him use countless times in business meetings to diffuse tension. Maya, you're awake, he said, his tone unnervingly calm. I was just grabbing a snack. Emma was helping me. At this hour? I asked, my eyes darting between the two of them. Emma's face was pale, her eyes downcast as though she couldn't bear to meet my gaze. Kevin ran a hand through his hair, chuckling lightly as if the whole situation were amusing. "I didn't want to disturb you," he explained. "You've been so tired lately, and I figured I could handle things myself. Emma was just being helpful." My stomach churned as I glanced at Emma, whose silence spoke louder than any excuse Kevin could conjure. "Helping with what exactly?" I pressed. Kevin stepped closer, his expression softening as he reached for my hand. "Maya, it is nothing. I didn't want to wake you. You need your rest, remember, for the baby. Come on, let's get you back to bed." I pulled my hand away, taking a step back. "You didn't answer my question, Kevin. Why were you whispering, and why does Emma look like she's about to cry?" Emma opened her mouth, but Kevin cut her off with a sharp glance. "She's just tired too," he said quickly. "It's late. Let's not make this into something it's not." Every fibre of my being screamed that something was wrong, but I found myself nodding, too drained to push further. "Fine," I said, my voice barely audible. Let's go to bed." Kevin looked relieved as he guided me out of the kitchen, his arm around my shoulders. But as we climbed the stairs, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was missing something, a piece of the puzzle that refused to reveal itself. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Kevin's steady breathing filled the silence. My heart ached with doubt and confusion, but I told myself to let it go. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it really was nothing. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a revelation I wasn't yet ready to face. I told myself I needed to hear or catch them red-handed making out or something. I waited for the right moment. And that moment came. One evening, I was returning from the mall where I had to pick up some toiletries. I just decided to step out to get the toiletries myself because I wanted fresh air. I returned home, gently making my way upstairs. I heard voices. Kevin's voice precisely, but isn't Kevin supposed to be at work? His voice was low, and I recognized the softness in his tone. It was the same voice he'd used when we were in love, when he was the man I thought I knew. But now it was laced with something else, something I wasn't prepared to hear. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, hidden in the shadows, watching as Kevin and Emma were standing close together near the bed. Their bodies were angled toward each other in a way that felt intimate. I could hear the murmur of their conversation, muffled but still sharp enough to slice through my heart. "I can't keep doing this," Emma said, her voice tremulous. "You promised me, Kevin. You said you'd leave her. But now she's pregnant. How can I compete with that?" Emma asked, her voice still tremulous. "I'm doing this for us," Kevin responded quickly, almost desperately. Kissing Emma on the neck, I felt like 1,000 knives cut through my skin as I watched. "She doesn't need to know about us, not yet. I'll take care of everything. You're the one I want." This wasn't just a suspicion anymore, it was real. Kevin's betrayal was real. My heart ached as I listened to them, the betrayal sinking deeper with each word. Kevin wasn't just distant anymore. He had already made a choice. He had already decided who he wanted, and it wasn't me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't make sense of anything. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with everything, had built a life with, was standing there whispering promises of a future with Emma, a future without me. And I couldn't escape it. When I finally managed to collect myself, I knew I had to confront him. There was no more denial, no more pretending. The truth was too clear now. But as I approached them, stepping out of the shadows into the dim light of the room, I wasn't sure what to expect. Would he admit it? I walked into the room, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "Kevin, Emma! What's going on here?" They froze, caught in the act. Kevin's face turned pale, his eyes wide with panic. Emma stepped back slightly, her lips trembling. It was exactly what I had expected, but still it stung in ways I couldn't explain. "Nothing's going on," Kevin said quickly, trying to recover, but the panic in his voice only made it worse. "We were just talking, Maya." Just talking. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I had already heard the truth. The way they looked at each other, the caressing and kissing, the way they whispered. Nothing about it was innocent. And I could feel it deep in my bones, the certainty that everything I had built, everything I had trusted was falling apart. The weight of the truth crashed down on me like a tidal wave, each moment of clarity washing over me with a pain so deep I couldn't breathe. The whispers, the lies, the secrecy, all of it had led me to this one undeniable fact. Kevin and Emma had been together long before I even entered the picture. I was nothing more than a pawn in their twisted game, a stepping stone for Kevin to climb higher, to secure a life of comfort and wealth, all the while pretending to love me. I had confronted him repeatedly, each time expecting the truth, but always being met with his feigned innocence. The nights alone, the late meetings, the distance, it had all been so much more than I could have imagined. But now there was no denying it. The pain of being deceived by someone I had trusted with everything, the man I had loved, the father of my child, was unbearable. I demanded an answer immediately. There was no need trying to deny or pretend about it now. I heard it all. I saw it with my eyes. Kevin had kissed Emma on the neck and caressed her. I could only imagine what they had done in my absence in my house, and maybe on my bed or on my couch. These thoughts started to drive me crazy. "Kevin, you are having an affair with Emma, right?" I queried. "You are sleeping with our maid." "You disappoint me, Kevin," I said, tears beginning to flow from my eyes. "I trusted you. How dare you do this to me? How dare you?" Kevin and Emma's faces were guarded, and I could feel the tension between us all thickening. Kevin's eyes flickered with guilt, but there was no real remorse there, just fear. Fear of being caught, fear of the consequences. Emma stood silently, her expression cold and unreadable, like she knew this moment would come, and she didn't care anymore. How long?" I demanded, my voice steady, but my hands trembling at my sides. "How long has this been going on?" Kevin hesitated, but then the mask finally slipped. "It's been years, Maya. Before I met you, before we even started this life. I never meant for it to go this far, but I couldn't walk away from what Emma and I have." The words hit me like a slap, each one ringing in my ears. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in the reality of his betrayal. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted him so completely, given him everything I had, only to find out it was all a lie? Emma spoke then, her voice as cold as her eyes. "I never cared about you, Maya. You were just a way for him to get what he wanted." Her words stung more than I expected. I had thought of Emma as a friend, someone who had been kind to me when I needed help. But now, standing before me, I saw her for what she really was: complicit, calculating, and heartless. The betrayal didn't just come from Kevin, it came from her too. The woman who had smiled at me, cleaned my house, pretended to be my ally while lying behind my back. I felt sick to my stomach, the shock and betrayal swirling inside me like a tornado, tearing me apart from the inside out. Kevin's face was pale, his eyes shifting away from mine as if he couldn't face what he had done. "Maya, I'm sorry I never wanted to hurt you, but it's over now. I'm done with you. I'm done with this." The finality of his words was like a knife to my chest. I could barely comprehend them, the reality of being discarded so easily. It felt as if the life we had built, the love I thought we shared, had never meant a thing. All of the sacrifices, all the dreams I had for our future, had been nothing more than a facade. I stood there, numb, staring at the two of them. The anger, the betrayal. It swirled inside me like a storm I couldn't escape. But more than that, there was a deep, unshakable sorrow. How could I have been so blind? How could I have loved someone so unworthy of that love? Kevin moved toward me, but I stepped back, holding my hands up in a final gesture of self-preservation. I didn't want to hear any more of his excuses. I didn't want to hear his apologies. I was done. "Get out," I whispered, my voice breaking despite my best efforts to remain composed. "Get out of my house, both of you, before I do something we all would regret. I don't want anything from you. Not anymore." As they left the room, I felt the weight of their departure, the finality of it sinking in. The life I thought I had was gone, and in its place was only an empty shell of what had once been my world. I was left alone, standing in the wake of their betrayal, wondering how I could ever move forward. The house felt emptier than ever, each room a painful reminder of the life I thought I had, of the love I thought was real. I stood in the middle of our bedroom, staring at the bed where we used to lie together, wondering how I could have missed the signs for so long. Betrayed, heartbroken and pregnant, my world had shattered in a way I never thought possible. The tears came then, hot and unrelenting, as I crumpled onto the floor, the pain of my shattered world too much to bear. I could hardly breathe with the weight of it all. The lies, the deception, the fact that the man I loved never truly loved me back. The betrayal was not just about Kevin and Emma, it was about everything I had sacrificed for this life, everything I had believed in. The future I had envisioned was suddenly clouded with uncertainty. What was I supposed to do now? How was I going to move forward? I felt like I was drifting in a sea of sorrow, with no land in sight. I didn't have the answers, but I did know one thing. I wasn't going to let this break me. I had to decide what came next, for my sake and for my baby. I had spent so long building a life around the idea of love and partnership, only to find it all crumble in a matter of days. But I wasn't going to let that define me. I was stronger than that. I was more than this betrayal, and I would find my way no matter what. I spent the following weeks in a haze, trying to wrap my head around the events that had transpired. I stayed away from the house as much as possible, spending hours at the office, burying myself in work. My company had always been a source of pride for me, and it was now the one thing that kept me grounded. I threw myself into managing it, handling the day-to-day operations with a determination that surprised even me. It was like a lifeline, a reminder of who I was before my world had been turned upside down. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the weight of everything would catch up to me, moments when I'd feel the sharp sting of betrayal all over again. But little by little, I started to find my footing with therapy. I had told myself I was not going to press charges. I wanted our divorce to be on the low. I didn't want the attention of the media. It was going to be depressing for me and my baby. I was willing to forgive and let everything go. I started to see a future that didn't include Kevin. It was hard to accept, but I had to. I was still pregnant, and as the days passed, my love for the baby growing inside me became my anchor. I didn't need Kevin's approval or Emma's approval. I needed my own strength, my own resolve to move forward. I began taking control in ways I hadn't before, reinventing parts of the business, making bold decisions that I had been too afraid to make when Kevin was around. It was like a veil had been lifted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly living for myself. I wasn't going to let this pain define me. I was going to rebuild stronger than ever. After all, I hadn't done anything wrong. All I did was love someone wholly. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. I knew there would be more tough days ahead, that healing wouldn't come easily. But for the first time, I felt the stirrings of something new. Hope, not for what I had lost, but for what I could create. And for my baby, I'd tell her this story too. This was my life now, and I was going to make it count. My name is Maya. I am torn, but I am not broken. Thank you for listening to my story.